Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good whatever time it is where you are, and welcome once again to Full Fat Spoiler Chat, the show in which we, the folks at Nerd Caliber, and tonight that would be me, look at a piece of recent nerd entertainment, and we discuss it in depth. We talk about what was good about it, what was bad, what worked, what didn't work, if there's any sort of overriding themes, tones, messages, and so on for this particular piece of entertainment, which tonight is the recently premiered movie on Netflix. I think it was beginning of the month, Nightbooks, starring Kristen Ritter from Jessica Jones fame, and a bunch of young actors who I haven't really ever heard of. Um, I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber, first-person shooter on Facebook as a cosplay photographer, burly_adopter on Twitter. And if you have not seen this movie and you do not like spoilers, then I would suggest you look at some other wonderful piece of streaming entertainment on whatever streaming platform you happen to be on right now. Um, if you have seen it and you do not mind spoilers, stay with us, stick around, offer your opinions in the chat on the show itself, the movie itself, or on my opinions about the movie. So let's hope to hear from some of you people out there. Agent W, already welcome to the chat. Again, feel free to toss anything out there about this movie if you have seen it. And I think that's all that we've got so far. But along those lines, we are trying to build up our Twitch following to be something close to our wonderful YouTube following and Facebook Live following. So if you have a Twitch account, please go to Twitch, go to the URL you're seeing on your screen right now, twitch.tv/nerdcaliber, and follow us. That would be wonderful. We'd love to have you. And after you've done that, if you're tuning into another upcoming live stream, maybe do it on Twitch. To make everybody at the Twitches happy. Anyway, so what is it we're talking about? Nightbooks. Oh, and by the way, I'll give you guys a fair warning. This is probably going to be a half an hour tops. Yes, my allergies are acting up a little bit, but, you know, realistically, I'm not going to lie to you. Warner Brothers dropped Dune on HBO Max a day early. So it's been available to stream since 6 o'clock, and I honestly can't believe I'm not watching it right now, and I'm actually doing our scheduled show. But hey, I'm dedicated like that. But it won't be a long show. Trust me. So, Nightbooks is a movie, like I said, on Netflix, that is based on a book that came out in 2018 by J.A. White called Nightbooks. Very well reviewed on both Amazon and Goodreads. It's a 4.7 out of 5 on Amazon and a basically 4. It's 4.01 on Goodreads. And it tells the story of this boy, Alex, who winds up basically getting kidnapped by a witch who lives in his apartment building into her apartment, which is kind of TARDIS-like and it's way bigger on the inside. To tell her scary stories every night. And that's his only job. If he doesn't do that, terrible things, ultimately something like death or worse than death, will happen to him. He discovers that there is one other young person, also being kept there. Yasmin, who functions basically as a cook, domestic servant, housekeeping, etc. Who doesn't have the same role that he has been given. And apparently this has been going on for a very, very, very long time. She has a library that is multiple stories in this, magical apartment that is loaded with books that people have, written stuff in for the stories that she wants to hear. And the story is basically about how they attempt to break out and what they discover about her and about her past and so on that helps them escape. If they do escape, this is the spoiler alert show, so let's get that spoiler right out in the front. They escape. And that's pretty much it. It's an hour and 45 minutes long, so it goes by pretty quickly, and it's a adventure, not horror. I mean, it's horror in the way Goosebumps was horror. And it is geared. The books, straight up in Amazon, says they're geared for 8 to 12, or the book is. So the movie is pretty much the same. It's geared for a tween audience. So, first thing we do when we do these shows, we talk about what we like, then what we didn't like, then theme and tone, messages, and so on. The bigger picture stuff. So, what did I like about this particular movie? So in general, I liked Kristen Ritter. This is her as the witch is named Natasha. And she does a pretty good job. She rides that line of being scary without being really scary, and being campy without being too ridiculously over the top. There are a lot of really interesting concepts in here that I like. Whether they're executed well, we'll get into in a later segment of the show. So ultimately you find out that this is kind of, as other reviewers have said, it's sort of like, the Arabian 1001 Nights and a Night, in which there are tales within the tale. You do see him telling some of his stories, and they do actually present a little bit of sort of that as a movie within a movie. The 3 or 4 times he does it. And that's a cool concept. It also mixes in quite a bit of some Grimm's fairy tale stuff, particularly Hansel and Gretel, which obviously, kids kidnapped by a witch. Goes deeper than that. Ultimately, and again, spoiler show, folks, spoiler alert, spoiler. You find out that Natasha wasn't the original witch that lived in this apartment that's connected to a bunch of other worlds, or places anyway. One of which is the original gingerbread house that Hansel and Gretel stumble across. And the original witch of this whole thing is, in fact, Griselda, the witch from Hansel and Gretel. And that plays out very interestingly at the end. As it turns out, one of the big reveals, spoilers, one of the big reveals is that Natasha was a kidnapped child herself, and ultimately wound up becoming, the favorite of Griselda. So Griselda never ate her, and Natasha does horrible things to kids, turns them into little dolls and stuff, and a hairless cat, but doesn't eat the kids. Griselda is straight out of the Hansel and Gretel, story. Griselda bakes and eats kids. So Natasha was one of those kids. She managed to basically charm Griselda to the point where Griselda liked having her around, and eventually figured out a way to put Griselda into like a deep sleep and steal her magical powers. So the concepts in here are really interesting and cool. And I bet in the book they play out really, really well. I can see that being like a really amazing reveal in the book, and just, although I haven't read it, but again, it's got really good high ratings on Amazon and Goodreads. The performances by the kids are okay. I don't know if I could say I like them. The actress who plays Yasmin, so let me bring up, so this is Alex and Yasmin right here. The actress that plays Yasmin is pretty solid. Lydia Jewett. The actor who plays Alex, Winslow Fegley, apparently he's from a family of actors, and has done, as a kid already, a lot of stage work. And you can kind of tell. you know, he has moments where he actually, overacting isn't the right word. He is acting beyond the needs of the work. Um, to the point where I want to see this kid do like a villain role. Um, he's got those chops, which aren't needed in this particular role at all. But um, and that's pretty much it. The rest of the cast is, you know, they appear in very short segments, if at all, and so they're not known names whatsoever. Quite a few of them seem to be from Canadian children's television. Um, some of them from stuff that is running here in America and produced by America, although it might be filmed in Canada. There's a couple of kids who are from The Handmaid's Tale, which is, you know, that's kind of surprising, because the tone of this is not Handmaid's Tale. I can tell you that. And honestly, that's pretty much what I liked about it. Now, having said that, and we are once again, you know, we've done this in a couple of anime octanes in the past month. Our alternative Monday show, Anime Octane, in which we do a similar sort of spoiler look at an anime. Where just this most recent one, this past Monday, we did Shaman King, also on Netflix. Well, the last one's on Netflix. And about a month ago, we did the all CGI reimagining of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So in both of those cases, I had to preface the fact that, you know, this particular piece of entertainment is geared towards tweens, you know, 8 to 12. And so it's not marketed at me. I'm not its intended audience. So my likes and dislikes have to be couched in that, you know, that awareness. So I obviously didn't like a whole lot of it. What I didn't like. So even though I said, you know, Kristen Ritter walks a fine line between, you know, sort of scary, campy, and so on, she's not good. I love Kristen Ritter. I think she's amazing. I think Jessica Jones is one of the best things, you know, coming out of any of the Marvel departments or you know, divisions. She's just kind of phoning it in, or it certainly seems that way. It's maybe not fair to compare, you know, something with this budget and, you know, this material and so on, to Anne Hathaway in the last year's Netflix movie The Witches, but the roles are similar, and yeah, sorry, Kristen, just it ain't there. I've already mentioned the kids. They're okay. Again, Lydia Jewett is probably the best one because her performance seems to be more consistent and more in tone with the nature of the movie, whereas the kid playing Alex, Winslow Fegley, is kind of all over the place. Again, with some really intense emotional moments that, you know, make you go, oh, wow, okay. Let's see this angry kid get, like, really angry and play a villain. And the production values are, you know, let's see. We already saw that image of Natasha. Let me see if we can find the one. Yeah, it doesn't really show her very well. But, you know, here are the two kids after they've been inside her, what do they call it, the nightmare something? It's basically, she has a greenhouse of magical plants in a special room. And they were in there and caused a lot of trouble and so on. Yeah, that's not really a good example either. You can kind of see it in their costumes. You know, it's just a lot of really high color, goopy mess. You know, it's Nickelodeon slime, basically. Which, again, it's what it's aimed at. But they have, they released this creature, which is about the size of a rat, which is apparently just a very terrible thing that, you know, destroys everything it can find, and it's got teeth. It might be a little scary for kids, but this is the image. That's the special effects level. That's the little critter. Now, granted, it's moving around a lot, so maybe you don't need anything quite that sharp. But dang. And that's kind of the tone of all of the production values out of this thing. It's not really that good. Kristen Ritter is in I don't know, half a dozen different costumes throughout the run of the movie, and some of them are like really bad cosplay interpretations of a rave witch. It's I can think of a lot of professional costumers that I know that work within the actual Hollywood industry that are also cosplayers that would do a infinitely better job. I can think of tons and tons of non-professional cosplayers who could do an infinitely better job in designing the look of this. So yeah, that's a big miss. Is that something that's going to detract its value or make it less interesting to the target audience, to the tweens? Probably not. But that doesn't mean you don't do it. Just because they may not appreciate it at that moment, they might appreciate it when they're doing a nostalgia rewatch of it, in 10 years. So, not putting in the effort in production design and so on because you don't have to because it's aimed towards kids is a pretty lousy thing. And that may not be why, and again, trying not to dump all over the production designers and the costumers and so on. I'm sure they did, what they were paid to do as best they could. But it's just not there. The story isn't terribly engaging as executed in this movie. There are some weird choices where it honestly, I don't want it to be any longer, but it really needed to be about 15 minutes longer so that some of the stuff had more explanation. They go into this this garden room and they wear glasses that shows so they can see more clearly because the only light is UV light. So everything is, neon glow UV garbage looking stuff. Which again is probably really interesting to the tweens, but they do nothing to explain why this room, except for a little bit of exposition once they're in it, where Yasmin explains, what the room is, and then the big danger with this, plant that has these, creatures growing in pods on it. Why they're there, I guess is mentioned. I don't even remember if they mentioned it, but certainly it's not explained. There are no stakes whatsoever to that segment. So when the thing bursts out and it's, a little scary looking, it's like, okay, I know they're going to get it. There's no question they're going to get it. But anyway, I would be willing to bet if you were reading that and in a book where they have more time to explain what the stakes are and why that room exists and why it's something that, Yasmin is so insistent that he shouldn't have been in until she needed his help to do something, it would have made more sense, and it would have made more drama in that scene where they accidentally release one of these creatures. So it's disjointed enough that it's very difficult to get any sense of any concern or worry about these kids. And again, it's geared towards tweens. Maybe you don't want to establish that level of worry quite so high, but there are other products that do it and do it well. One other thing that I have to point out, and it really bothered me, is at the end, so the kids are fighting Griselda. Griselda wakes up, gets really ticked off at Natasha. They have a witch fight. And Alex yells at one point, "Witch fight!" and runs, which is actually kind of funny. Um, and Griselda wins, seems to drop a whole bunch of, the ceiling of the room they're in down onto Natasha. And so Griselda, the old candy witch, goes running after the kids, and they're trying to escape in the elevator in the apartment building, but Griselda gets on the outside of the elevator, and then eventually sticks her head in through the grating, the exit, at the top, um, and then vomits all over the kids. Now it's a candy colored vomit, but still, I'm like, really? Okay. Again, Nickelodeon slime, sure, and the kids may like that. So they defeat her by tricking her back into her own house, and like Hansel and Gretel did, they push her into her oven, which is going. Um, and then somehow these kids manage to shut a cast iron door on an open flame oven with their bare hands to hold her in. And the movie takes time to show us her bubbling up and exploding, and and yeah, it's because she's, I guess, partly or mostly made of candy, that this is supposed to be candy bubbling up. Skin does that when people are on fire before it actually really starts to burn. It blisters and bubbles and pops just like she did. And I'm looking at this going, okay, everything up to this point hasn't been really scary or particularly disturbing, and they're focusing on a witch being burnt alive in her own oven. Not really sure I get that for the tweens. Daniela Xavier, welcome to the show, and you said 6, so I'll say 7. Don't know why, but I will. So yeah, they just made some sort of really weird choice with what they decided to get particularly graphic with at the very end, and it just boggled my mind. Now there's an implication at the very end that there may be a sequel, even though an awful lot of stuff has been dropped onto Griselda or onto Natasha. At the very end, you see her back in her apartment, or at least you see her foot. So as she steps in, and you hear her laugh, so clearly she's alive. And again, spoilers. It's right up there. Says spoilers. Spoiler chat says right down there. So yeah, so I didn't particularly care for it. It wasn't now it's not geared towards me, but it also didn't have the quality that it should have. And I think I've come to realize that Netflix has two different levels of quality based on what it gets. So Netflix series that it gets from outside the US, or stuff that it sets up itself, are usually really good. The Rain out of Denmark, Darkness out of Germany, and of course Mr. Sunshine, Squid Game, Kingdom, all of the stuff coming out of Korea. They're really well done productions. Didn't particularly care for Squid Game, but I recognize it was amazingly well done. Netflix movies are movies they buy that just can't be found anywhere else, that nobody picks up. So you got Cloverfield Paradox, which was an entirely different science fiction movie, and then J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot bought it and said, let's make it a Cloverfield movie, and boy does it show. And this may have been made directly for Netflix, but my guess is they probably shopped the idea around and nobody bit, and Netflix went, you know what? We'll give you this budget. And it shows. That budget being not particularly big. So, yeah. I should have known this going in. Netflix movies are often really questionable, particularly if it's something that already exists and they just bought the rights to. It's not the same thing as, or same quality level as Netflix series, particularly the ones that they pick up the rights to from outside the U.S. So tone, is there an overriding tone for this? Not, well, yeah, it's kind of mildly spooky meets campy. Um, and not enough of either. You know, throwing a lot of neon colored stuff into, a particular room, or UV colored, blacklight stuff into a particular room is not the same thing as going full on Joel Schumacher blacklight camp in, one of the Batman movies. Um, you know, Now granted, maybe they didn't want to do that because again, they're aiming this at tweens, and the tweens might eat that up. But it's just it's half baked. It's like, that's a neat idea. Stop right there. Um, Themes or messages? It's got a pretty strong message of believe in yourself, lean into your strengths, no matter how weird people tell you you are. Um, and don't be afraid of being different and weird. And that's basically Alex's story arc through this is that, you know, for all of the fact that he's kidnapped and being held against his will in a place where somebody's probably going to kill him or do worse if he doesn't step up and write books or stories that encourages him to write stories, which at the very beginning of the series he has been ridiculed so much by kids at school for being weird and loving this. He loves horror. He's got horror posters all over his wall. That he's decided he's going to stop. He was going to taking his books. He's got a notebook which he's writing most of his stories in and burn them. So it's a strong message. And that's probably the best thing about this whole movie is that it accurately and in a easily understandable way conveys this message of be true to yourself, lean into your strengths, and accept, if you're weird, who cares? Accept who you are, whether other people think that's weird or not. So in that regard, yeah, it that part of it worked, and they pulled that off pretty well. But again, that's sort of baked into the story, and unless they change the details of who the characters are, as long as they win out in the end, which Alex does, Alex and Yasmin, that's the message. He starts off hating the fact that he's odd, or people think he's odd, and now he's starting to think he's odd. And the way that's expressed is through his writing of scary stories, so he hates that about himself. And that ends by the end. He's accepted himself. So would I recommend it? Not really. I don't think I'd even recommend it for tweens. They might like it, but there's better stuff out there. The Witches. It's got a strong message, and so you're not going to go wrong showing this to a tween, and they're certainly not going to be scared out of their gourd. 8 to 12, which is the target audience, is probably fine. 6 and under, maybe not. But as on a scale of 1 to 5, this is kind of straight up meh. It's a 2.5. It'd be lower than that if it wasn't for the strong message. But it's got that, and so good for it. So that's it, folks. That is my take on Nightbooks. I'm going to try really hard to stop either accepting recommendations or recommending myself stuff geared to tweens, because I don't review it well. So, hopefully you won't see too many of those going forward. So, once again, please, if you have a Twitch account, go to twitch.tv/nerdcaliber, follow us there, and maybe start watching us on Twitch if you have that account on some of our other live shows as they come up. Those live shows are, next Monday is No Nerd Caliber, where our team gets together and we talk about our favorite worlds from any type of science fiction and any media. The reason we're doing that is I'm going to jump over Tuesday's show and talk about next Thursday's show. On that full fat spoiler chat, we will be talking Dune. So you got all that time. You got a whole week to watch Dune at a theater on the big screen where it's, from what I hear, absolutely amazing. Or on your small screen at home. That's entirely up to you. It's streaming or in theaters, both. In between that, of course, Tuesday night is our Nerd Week Live. And we will be talking about all sorts of nerd news. Some stuff that we did not cover this last week. So it's a little bit more than a week old. Because DC Fandom just took up so much space. Even with just two of us on and running through it quickly, Lewis and I were on for an hour and 20 minutes last night. So, and speaking of things for you to check out, if you get a chance to go to patreon.com/nerdcaliber, we'd actually love to have you check it out. We'd even really love to have you become a patron. We have just 3 tiers. The lowest is $2 a month, and it basically helps us get to cons. We will have a team at another anime convention in Westford, Mass. This coming weekend. And we're still posting up photo galleries from New York Comic Con on nerdcaliber.com on the website. So please go to Patreon and check us out. And if you do decide you want to help us out and become a patron, we'd love that. Love to have you. And so with that, thank you all for tuning in. Please, people, stay safe out there. It's going to start getting, up here in New England anyway, pretty cold by the end of this weekend. Probably our first frost. So stay warm and stay safe out there if you're in one of those climates where you have to worry about that. And we will see you at an upcoming show. Thank you very much for being in the chat. And